Yes, and we are live. We are live. Welcome, everybody to our Google I/O Extended Eldoret. So this is basically an extension of what happens during Google I/O every year. So what we do as GDG communities is to um, just try and do some recaps of what exciting features were announced or any new thing or stuff that was announced during Google I/O that makes sense to our developer community members. So in these years, Google I/O, we all know that it's Corona Manenos and the best we can do is do virtual, and we are excited to have amazing speakers today in the show, and looking forward to really an exciting time with them, and really nice speakers. So I'll just get to it. So thanks for joining us. Welcome to our live stream. This is GDG Eldoret. It's actually our second event that we're live streaming. The first one was the Women Tech Makers event, and we are looking forward to in-person events. But at the moment, as we all know, is that we will be going virtual. So Google I/O Extended Eldoret happens every year, and just like any other community around the globe, that is part of GDG communities, and we really love doing it. And apart from that, we are just a very fun community based in Eldoret. And if you've been in Eldoret or Rift Valley, you must have heard about us with this amazing conference we usually host called FS Rift Valley. And we are just a group of students, professionals, designers, tech enthusiasts who are very friendly and love to share stuff. And that's the purpose of our community. And yeah, just like I said, we are very fun, and you can always join us via the GDG platform. You can always search for GDG Eldoret and become an amazing community member, so that you cannot miss out events. And when we go, physical, this in a few months, or maybe hopefully next year, you can join us in person. But you can join us anytime, anywhere, and we'll be very happy to have you as a member. So for today, I extended. We have amazing speakers. We have Bruto, who is an engineer delight, Android engineer. We also have Harun. We have Kamal, and I'll be the host. So what we're going to do today is going to have an interesting lightning recap of Android, what's new, and how their personal experience has been with the new features announced, and how you can actually move forward and start working with these new features announced during the Google I/O. And after that, we'll also have an amazing session with Kamal. Kamal will be talking about UX and UI perspective, and share some of his amazing interesting experience, with the same time back to what was also announced at Google I/O. So what I can say is that these are very amazing speakers, and we are looking forward to really an interesting session with them. So what we're going to do is going to start up with Android recap, and going to late Harun and Valentine Ruto to take up the stage, and the rest of us will be backstage. And yeah, that is it. Welcome, Harun. Welcome, Valentine. If you have your slides, you can share them now. Yes, Harun.
Yes, hi.
Great. And
Can you see my
yes,
screens?
that is it. Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm Harun Wangereka. I'll let my co-speaker introduce herself too.
Hi everyone, thank you Mai for inviting us to this. I am Valentine Ruto, an Android engineer at Delight. Glad to be taking you through the Android recap with Harun. So back to you, Harun.
Okay, so today our session will be an Android recap. We're going to cover some of the exciting announcements that were announced at I/O. So I'll begin with the Jetpack announcements, and then Valentine will later on pick up with the Android 12 announcements. Yes, so we have some couple of announcements. To begin with, if you maybe are not familiar with Jetpack, Jetpack is just a couple of libraries, maybe to help you as an Android developer to write cleaner code and much precise code. So we had like a couple of announcements, couple of libraries going to stable, new libraries being announced, and also one of the most exciting libraries that has been quite for some time being composed. I'm going to highlight some of these libraries. So to begin with, we have, as I mentioned, we have some libraries going to stable. One of them is Camera X, we have Paging 3, we have Consent Layout, Hilt, and Security Crypto. So just to highlight for Camera X, this is just a library which has a unified API for you to maybe take pictures and record videos using the camera application. The good thing with most of these Jetpack libraries is that they give you like a unique experience across different devices, which before the Jetpack libraries was maybe a pain. So they try to address some common pain points that we are having. So for paging 3, this is just a library for loading lists and which has maybe a bit of improvements and has been going to stable. So another libraries, you can see we have the better ones, we have data store, and then new libraries that were released, we have Macrobench, App Search, and Google Search. So in a short, I'm going to maybe briefly describe what the new libraries entail. I'll start with my Macrobench. So we have a benchmarking library inside Jetpack. So, but now they introduced a new one, which is Macrobench, which just helps you to detect your statistics and performance of your application during startup and other behaviors like when you scroll through maybe a list of items and so on and so on. So this is the Macrobench library just helps you to give you these statistics for your application and pinpoints you areas where you can improve the performance of your application. We also have another library which was added to the Jetpack suite, which is the Google Shortcuts. So for those who are who are curious to playing around with the Google Assistant, this just helps you expose your actions to the Google Assistant in a simpler way. And lastly, we have the App Search. So the App Search is just a library which helps you do full text search inside the device. So all of these libraries, you can find them at the Jetpack Jetpack libraries page where they are all listed and their functionalities. So, as I mentioned, we have something very interesting that was announced during the I/O, that is Jetpack Compose, which will be stable in coming July. Currently, we have release candidate 02, which is available. This means that we are seeing a version 1.00 being released at the maybe this July. So for maybe if you have never interacted with Compose, just to highlight, this is just a library for you to write UI in much different way, that is in a declarative way, and makes writing UI much simpler. So I'll show you a Compose example later on, but for now it is just a declarative way of writing UIs, which has been exciting, and most of the people have been looking forward to a stable release for a long time. So another thing that was announced was most of the Jetpack libraries have introduced, most of the Jetpack libraries have been integrated with Jetpack Compose. So for example, if you are using things like navigation, Hilt, and so on and so on, they have also have other libraries for supporting Jetpack Compose. So in a way that you can write whatever, in a way that your app will still use the feature that you are using, but still use Compose. You can take advantages of other Jetpack libraries, which is a nice thing since you don't have to do much of the rewriting in case you need to shift to Jetpack Compose. Yes. So inside also Jetpack libraries, there were existing ones that were announced quite some time. I'm going to just highlight some of the new things that I found very interesting, maybe to highlight. So to begin with, just maybe to mention, nowadays we have like a 2 weeks release cycle for all the libraries in the alpha channel. So meaning you don't have to wait like for a long time to get maybe bug fixes, improvements, or new features. So you can always check every 2 weeks. You can always check on the Android X release page. We have libraries being updated. And in case maybe you want to just a quick glance, you can follow Ian Lake because he usually highlights on Twitter maybe some of the improvements that have been done on these Jetpack releases. So this is such an interesting thing and such a good thing because now you don't have to wait for a stable release or maybe have to wait for so long to get maybe a critical bug fixed. So maybe for those who have been using Room, or maybe if you have never interacted with Room before, Room is a persistent storage library inside the Jetpack libraries. So they introduced one of the feature called auto migrations, which is a very nice feature because previously, before Room version 2.4, doing migrations was quite hectic and could result in a bit of unwanted behavior. But now, as maybe you can see from this code snippet, you can just define your version. Let's say you want to upgrade to version 2 and then define entities. So entities is just a class that represents the tables in your database. And then with this auto migration attribute, you can define how you want to migrate your database from version 1 to version 2. So previously, before this version, you had to do like a lot of work and it was maybe error prone, but with this auto migration feature, it's much more easier for you to maybe write migrations. As I mentioned, Jetpack libraries, most of them try to address the common pain points we as developers are facing. So that's why you'll see most of them try to make it simpler to write code and also make it easier for you not to write a lot of boilerplate code. Yes, so just to highlight a couple of others, we have Work Manager. So we have support for multi-processes application. And then another thing that was introduced, which is very nice, was Background Task Inspector. So currently you can use your Android Studio to inspect the background processes that you are working on or that you have started on your application. And then for navigation, there was this feature that was requested for a long time since the navigation library was introduced, that is support for multiple backstacks. So this is a very nice feature. So you can build complex application using the navigation library and have them support like multiple backstacks. And then we have other two libraries, the emoji compat. Currently, it supports modern emojis from API 19 and above. And then we have the security crypto, which is just a library for you to encrypt and files and also shared preferences. So this has a couple of updates, and it's an interesting library for those who want to deal with security for your application, for the files that you're storing in your app, or maybe simple things like shared preferences. And then lastly, we have the fragment, and it has like the activity result integration. And also on top of that, they did like a major rewrite for the most of the internals, which brought some improvements. And then lastly, they have what we call a new fragment on attach listener, which replaces the old on attach fragment. So this listener is just for you to be notified when your fragment has been attached. So the fragment API has been majorly rewritten and also improved. So you can also check it out to see these features. Yes, and I think that was my end on the highlight of maybe some of the libraries and also some of the new announcement. Later on, I'll just show you a compose example. But for now, I'll let Valentine proceed with the Android 12 features.
Thank you, Harun. I think you'll be my. I think I'll be saying next. Okay. So today I'll be highlighting the Snowcorn new features. So Snowcorn is a code name for Android 12. Pretty cool, right? So next. Thank you. So these are the features that I will highlight. Of course, there are more that I wish I could, but I thought that these are the ones which more fitting. So I will highlight the splash screen API, which is majorly just the launch animation, picture-in-picture improvements, and the new features that they have, blurring, notifications, which is just for notification, Bluetooth permissions, and widgets. So for this splash screen API, that's how it looks like. So the idea for it is like when you launch your app, it kind of like starts from the point where the icon was, and then it just fills the whole screen. And this happens for when you do a cold start or warm start, but not the splash is not seen when you do a hot start. So what happens is the system shows the splash screen using the themes and animation that you have defined, and then when the app is ready, the splash screen is dismissed and the app is displayed. It's just as simple as that. There's nothing interesting with that, but it kind of brings in the launch animation into your app, so it gives it a little bit of material, which is quite beautiful. Yes, so these are some of the rules that you need to follow. So let's take a look at the second image, which has the M, which is a 1, and then the circle, which is number 2, and then the rectangle, which is number 3, and then 4, which is the background. So for the app icon, it should be a vector drawable, and it can be static or animated. So if you want to have that nice material feel for the launch animation, and then the icon background, which is number 2, which is also optional. You can have it if you want to have like more constraint with the window background. And then if you're using and then if the window background is a plain color, it will be used by default if the attribute is not set. So make sure you adhere to those rules. There are more. You can check it out on that link below. Yes. Now this one actually was super interesting, to be honest. The rich content insertion, which is basically unified content API. So the idea for it is that it lets your apps like to just simply accept content from any source. So like if your content like in the clipboard, or you have it in the keyboard, or you have it in a drag and drop. So from this GIF here, you can see a screen, and then it's split into 2. So you have like 2 apps, and then you just literally drag and drop. Imagine how beautiful. Yeah, it's so simple. I can't wait to work on that one. You can check more on that link there too. Yes. So for PIP improvements, Harun, just go to the next screen so that I show an example before we do this. Yeah, so this is picture-in-picture. I'm sure you have seen it on Maps or on Netflix. Is where you have your application, and say like you're watching something on Netflix, or for this example, which is Maps. Then when you press home, it minimizes the screen and it comes that, so you can just continue working on other application simultaneously, if we get the point. So let's look at the improvements. Yeah, so for the improvements, they just improved on single tapping and double tapping. So when you single tap, it now shows you the display controls instead of maximizing, like removing it from the minimal screen. From the smaller screen to the big one. So it just shows you the control there. And also when you double tap, it now toggles between current size and the maximum size. So those are the improvements. Some of the new features that were added, they added an API flag for smoother transition to PIP mode in gesture mode. So say, I don't know if it's I think maybe like in Pixel, I don't know which one, but you can just gesture it. and then you can maximize or not. I wish I could show my screen, but anyway, the new API flag to disable seamless resizing for non-video content. So this is, for example, the YouTube music. I think when you do VPN and you go to USA, maybe I think you can get VIP. You can get PIP on the non-video one. So there's seamless resizing on that. It was a little bit sketchy. Another one is smooth animation when exiting out of PIP. Well, I mean, right now it's very unceremonious. When you click X, it just disappears. Very unceremonious, and sometimes it can hang, so you don't know what's happening. So that has been improved, and also support for new gestures. Yeah, you can check them out on the link below. Yeah. So this one, it was like a long time coming, because there's a time when I think we have always been required to ask for location when you just want to scan a new device, and most of the users, I think most of the users complained about this, like, why do you need location? And I just want to send a music, I just want to send a file or something. So they introduced these permissions: Bluetooth scan, Bluetooth advertise, and Bluetooth connect. So Bluetooth scan is just if your app is looking for Bluetooth devices, so you can add that Bluetooth scan. You can use it for that. Advertise is if your app makes the current device discoverable to other Bluetooth devices. You can use that attribute. That permission attributes to your manifest. Bluetooth connect is if your app communicates with already paired Bluetooth devices. So you can use those permissions. So these are the main improvements that they did to the Bluetooth permissions. Next. Sorry, yes. Yeah. So with notification, they added phone call notification, which is just a new style of call, like notification.call style. There's like the way when you're setting notifications for phone, so you can add this, and then you can say, like, is it, I think I forgot to add that part, but the code thing, but it just says, is it important? Something like that, and then you set it to true or false. So it just helps you with ranking the importance of incoming calls. That's majorly it on the phone call notifications for Android 12. Yeah, amazing feature. I was like so happy when they did this, because earlier for all the other version, you couldn't really blur the background. You could only dim it, which was required me to like do a lot of custom views, and it was I think yes, actually we did custom views, and then later on there was a library we used for blurring, which was causing out of memory. So I was very happy when this came out. So this is like this code snippet here is literally the only thing you need to add, and this code snippet here for blurring, like this is the results of this code snippet. So for the blur, you just use the render effect to apply common graphics to any view or rendering hierarchies. Imagine how beautiful. So you can check it out. That, yeah. Yes, widgets. I've never actually built a widget before, but I think with these new improvements I will. So for Android 12, they're trying to refresh widgets they're trying to refresh it, like its adoption, to drive engagement and making it easier to build on. So they've added native interactive elements like checkbox, like you can see, like this is just a shopping list. Say your app has how can I put it? Your app, say like it's a to-do app or something, you can just create a widget with that, and then since you have the interactive elements, which for this case is the checkbox, a user can just interact with those tappable controls directly from the home screen without going into your app, which actually makes the widget useful, hence more user engagement. Next. Yeah, they've tried to make it beautiful, so you can now implement rounded corners. I think this also, the rounded corners also, you can apply to any other view, I believe. I'm not quite sure, but yes. So you can use this system app widget background radius, which is just the background of the widget itself, like the radius of the widget itself, and then this second attribute is for the views which are inside. Like for this one, for this example, is the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that part. Yeah, the gray part. Also, you can apply dynamic colors, which helps with consistency across all different widgets and the system on its own. So for this example, I think this is a light theme. So you can, the same way we do, same way we create color themes on the app, like the ones that we use on the toolbar. It's just the same way that you can use for this as well. Next. Yes. So another cool thing is personalization of the widget. So you can play around with the configure or the reconfigure attribute for when you're creating that when you're creating your widget, so that you can just so that you can tell the users if if it's reconfigurable or not. And if it is, if you set it, say for this one, it says that this widget is reconfigurable, so you get that the number one there, that edit thing. So you can be able to just edit that thing, add like more widgets, more parts of the app to that widget directly. So that makes it like it kind of drives user engagement, and it kind of makes it easier to edit that widget. Next. Yeah. Also sizing and layout. You can actually specify additional widget sizing constraints. So it's just in styling. So now you can add like more constraints that how can I put it? You can add like sizing constraint at, I don't know, I think it's it's explainable, hopefully. You can also provide responsive layouts. So like you can create like a set of layouts if the widget size changes. Say okay, let's say for example this list, yeah, you can have like two items, and then maybe I can edit and then add more items. So that means I need it to be a little bit longer, or maybe I want it to be in a grid view, etc. So you can pre-write those layouts before and then set it to the widget. So that has made it a little bit more easier, instead of previously it was just constant, like this is the layout, it's a linear layout, that's it. Yeah, and also right now you can actually add description to your widget. How cool is that? So you don't need to wonder what this is. Yeah, for more you can check it down there. This resource is from YouTube. It was the Google I/O talk for refreshing widgets. Yes, you can check it out. It's really cool. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Harun and Valentine, for that insightful recap talk. And definitely, for those who are wondering about the resources, we will definitely share the link to the slides in the chat, so you'll be able to get it. And for those who are in our mailing list, we'll definitely get access to it. Yeah, appreciate that. So I guess if there'll be any questions, we will be back into this session for a short roundtable, and we will be able to answer your questions. So I think the next thing is to introduce our next speaker, who is Kamau. And Kamau will be taking us through the UI UX recap. So I think Kamau, karibu. If you have your slides, you can show.
Hi, everyone. Just give me 1 second to share my slides. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yep, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I'll just highlight a few things, two major things that were updated on during Google I/O. And the goal of updating those things is to enable developers and designers and product teams to build more personal and dynamic experiences with material design. And the first thing that was announced is Material U. In 2014, Google introduced material design, which has been used up to date. And from that, Google has discovered more challenges that developers are facing due to more preferences that our users are starting to have, and also the fact that there are new form factors of devices. For example, we've seen Samsung has launched and Galaxy Fold. There's, I think, Galaxy Fold Z, something like that. And all these other phone manufacturers are starting to adopt all these crazy, weird form factors of devices, the foldables, and so on and so forth. And also extending to things like Android Auto, Android TV, and things like that. They saw the need to revolutionize material design into something they're calling Material U. And what Material U is, it is a new way of design. It's a radical change to how we approach design, in the sense that it also brings the element of feelings and emotions towards your design. So the question the Google team asked themselves is, what if form did not just follow function, just having a button and putting around corner, but also involved and followed feeling. So in 2021, Google introduced Material U during Google I/O, and this is something they are continuously working on, and we should expect to see it in Android 12 when it's officially released later in the year. Material U explores a more humanistic approach to design, one that celebrates the tension between design sensibility, personal preferences, and does not shy away from emotion, without compromising, obviously, on the functional foundations of the apps. So that's, if it's a button, it's a button, yes, but it has that personalized touch to it. Yeah, so this is basically what Material U will look like. We can see here your notification drawer. The second screen, we can see this is the privacy dashboard from your settings. The third screen, you have I think the home screen or the launcher screen, and so on and so forth. There are a bit of things. You can see it adapts to the wallpaper you have and takes those color elements. So what to expect with this? We're expecting that there'll be a ton of redesigned components that developers will be expected to start using. And already, if you have an app that uses material design, it will be wise to start going through the materials to understand what these new redesigned components are. So there are new shapes, new colors, new lighting, new animations as well. I think Val had shown one of the animations for the launcher icon or something of the sort. We're also expecting to see new configurations, new sliders, new toggles, and things like that start to come up. It will be wise for someone who is building an app that they expect users to be using in the future. That's 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now, to refer to material.io, where they can access all these resources and material components and documentation from design to also the code itself is available on this link. Also, the Figma community has very nice resources, like this screenshot I took is from a project from the Figma community. It also be wise for someone to just go to community and just search for Material U from the Figma community dashboard there. Yeah, so this is something I did using this library to come up with the library I got from Figma community to just create this UI we are seeing here. You can see this music player here showing that there's some music playing, and this is when your notification drawer is drawn. I think it's an interesting song to listen to, one of my favorites recently. Yeah, I think for Material U, that's about it. Please refer to material.io for more information. Next up, we look at design and build for large screens. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, there are all these form factors that are coming up. This is one of them, and there are also others where it's a phone you can fold into a normal screen size phone, 6-inch phone or a 5-point-something inch phone, and you can fold it into two. So that is a tablet that can also be folded into, for example, 6-inch screen phone. And with all these crazy form factors, you need to think about your user and obviously what devices they're using. You can't restrict where users will use your app, but all you can do is make the experience possible for them across any device they use. So for this, we are looking at where we are preparing the apps for all screen types. And one of the major things that we're looking at is using column grid. If you're familiar with web design or development, columns is something that is huge in column grid. I'll show you in just a moment what column grid is, just visually. And the column grid, we can all agree that the screen is one canvas. And just like in web, the column grid enables us to create mobile interfaces that are thoughtfully and intentionally designed for any screen and foldables. So there are a bunch of rules or guidelines are set by Google for us to be able to create for all these crazy form factors and devices. Design, there's a rule in design that design should be organic to the devices and also context. So for example, if a user is using a normal 5.5-inch phone, maybe they're expecting the navigation bar to be at the bottom. But if they're using a huge 8-inch tablet or 11-inch tablet or even a laptop, a small 13-inch laptop, they'd expect that, for example, to be on the right instead of at the bottom, on the left instead of at the bottom. Something like this, for example. So you can see the navigation bar is at the bottom. When you come to a tablet, it's on the right, it's on the left, with a bit of more details, and also the floating action bar is here. And if it was at the bottom, it would be a weird experience for the user. And when now we go to an even bigger screen, we see that we have a much bigger navigation drawer here with the same kind of elements. And these are things that make users enjoy using your app more and more. And also at a commercial scale, for example, if you're working on a banking application that is used by hundreds of thousands of users, these are things you need to put into consideration. So some of those rules include, for the column grid, include having margins, defined margins. For example, for a normal phone, it's recommended that you have 4 columns, and the margins on the right and left be around 16 density pixels. And for small tablets, 32, margins of 32, that's I think double. And for medium-sized laptop, you have 200. And for large desktops, that's 1440, I think, density pixels. It's fluid. Yeah, we have 3 types of values you can put. You can have a number, you can have it as fluid, or you can have it as fixed. And in this case, there's no fixed because we want them to adapt to the form factors of these devices. So for example, if you're using an app already on this device, for example, when it's a tablet, when you fold it, you don't want to ruin that experience. You want to adapt to what the user prefers to use. And this criteria helps you to achieve that. This guidelines helps you to achieve that. And using constraint layout, it's very easy to achieve these things. Yeah, I think you can also look into constraint layout. If you're not already using constraint layout, it's something that will be interesting for you to get started in implementing this as well. The second thing that was major was using the right component for the job. Like I mentioned, Material.io is the Bible for adapting material design, or Material U in the coming days, where you have access to, I think I can just open it up real quick. It's kind of the Bible for you learning material design and also getting the components, the design, the measurements, and things like that. So from the design, the components, and when you're developing, you can also get the code as well. So for example, we can start with Android. Can look something like the navigation bar at the bottom, and also things like that. So you can see here we have basics of material, the structure and layout, theming in Java, also in Kotlin as well. Yeah. And also you can look into the components in this. Yeah, you can see the different components and just go into it, and you're able to see the guidelines here and also access to the code that can help you implement these various things. Yeah. So yeah, use the right components for the job. Material design has all these different components, and it's good to first understand them. For example, how say it, we can implement the same navigation in different devices, and it's good to understand how you can be able to achieve those when you're building your app. I think in most cases at the moment, it is not necessary for a developer to build the app from scratch. If they are not already using this, you can just build on top of what you already have. And constraint layout is a great approach to get you started on this. Yeah, there's a great rule in UX that says attract with great UI, and obviously, having adaptability across multiple device form factors is one great way to have a great UI and retain with a great user experience. Yeah, I think that's it for me. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take that as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Calvin, so much for that amazing recap and overview about the same. And the resources they're sharing, they're very interesting resources. You can always go deep, be patient, and go through the documentations. And if you want some kind of personal touch or personal experience, you can always reach out to these speakers, and they can always guide you and provide or point you to was the directions you would need to kind of build whatever you're building in a very awesome way. Before we jumped to Calvin, I forgot that Harun had actually had a short demo he wanted to show us about Compose. So I think he can take up as we round up for any questions. So if you have any question, you can drop it in the chat, and we'll definitely be able to catch it up and try to answer. So I think Harun, you can take up. I'll take the rest of us backstage, and then you can take us through the demo, and then we'll get back our speakers to the round table. Cheers. Yep. Harun.
Give me a second to share my screen. So can you see my Android Studio?
Can't see your screen. Are you sharing?
Yes, I'm sharing. I'm sharing Android Studio.
Let me see. No, I can't. Can you try to share again?
Okay. What about now?
Great. Yep. We can now see it.
Yeah, so as I was mentioning, Jetpack Compose, many of Android developers has been waiting for the stable release for Compose. And just maybe to give you a quick overview, this is not maybe intended to explain what Compose is or most of the things, but just to show you what you can do with Compose. So this is just a sample application that shows a list and in Compose. So the very basic thing with Compose, you have this at composable annotation, which is the one that you use to declare your UI item. So it can be a text view, it can be maybe a list, and so on and so on. So as you can notice, there is no XML inside here. And so previously, if you come from an XML world, you'll know that creating such a list, you'd require definitely like two layouts and then an adapter, and then also an activity that initializes your adapter and all the UI logic for your view. But now with Compose, this is what you do. This is just a Compose activity, and then you're setting your component and then using the Compose theme. So the good thing is that even the Compose team are working together with the material team so that you can take advantage of some of the features on material design, as were mentioned by Kevin. So you can also use material design on your Compose application. So once you come to this greeting list, as you can see, to create a list, you just need to define like a column, and then this is just, you define like the padding and so on and so on. And then another thing you have is just a list item. So this list item, as you can see, it contains a text which just displays the content. And that is all you need to get your compose maybe list working. Another thing with compose is that you have the preview. As you can see, we have this at preview annotation. So this preview, if once you remove like this greeting lists, as you can see, and then just do a rebuild. So once you do like a rebuild, you'll see you no longer have this preview here. So this preview is just to help you to see how your UI is as you are designing your UI. And the good thing with Compose coming stable is that they made it to be a bit reflective. So if in case you change the colors, in case you change some text, you can also have like a live preview. So I think that is maybe just a glimpse of what Compose can do. So just imagine when you have like complex applications. So it make it easier for you to do animations and kind of things like design UI and come up with applications with great UI UX without having XML. So as you can see, I don't have a layout folder. I'm only using like this compose activity and then doing all the UI related stuff here. Yeah, so I think that is just a brief to show you. So we are like, the stable version is expected to come on July, so keep on watch. And yeah, so that's all from me on the demo.
Great. Thanks for the demo, Harun. So I'm going to add everyone into the stream. So this is a short roundtable. So for any questions you have, you can throw in. But we can start with any random questions around the first talk or the first session that was around the recap, the new features like Arun has been just mentioned, the compose on Android, and then jump into UX UI. So you can drop your question in the comments, and yeah, that will be really nice. As we wait for the questions to drop in, I have a specific question for each one of you. So, for example, Valentine. So, what is this one exciting update or new release that you would actually go for at the moment? And yeah, just from a personal perspective, and why?
Mine is just the blurring thing. I mean, it's making me so happy. I can't wait to go to my it's giving me even motivation to go to my side projects and just update and just start putting what are they? Alert dialogues everywhere and just blurring everything. I know Kevin will relate to this. I mean, it's really, really exciting to be honest.
Amazing. So, and Arun or Kevin, you want to add on what Valve has? I had just she mentioned you.
I think being an iOS user, I already had this, so
Wow.
exciting. You guys copy what we already have. Thank you.
Wow. Just wow. Anyway, I saw a tweet that they say that with Android it's like Android updates are more like a little a little too little, a little too late, because the updates are like already exist in iOS. So
Okay. Nice. Wangareka, what exciting feature?
So I think for me, one of the exciting features is the multiple backstack support on the navigation component. I think for me that's a plus because I've been using the navigation component for quite some time, and that is a much needed feature. And then another interesting thing that I found was the rewrite of the fragment API. Nowadays, things are a bit smooth because previously, or maybe let's say 2018 and before, people had nightmares working with fragments, but we had like an entire team dedicated on making our experience on working with fragments a bit much easier. So I think for me, those two will go, and then looking forward to compose stable release so that I can finally get to learn more about it and maybe build a couple of apps with it.
Amazing. Interesting. Your comments, Kelvin. One exciting thing you would actually go for right now?
I think for me it's just the general overhaul of material design to material U, and all the exciting capabilities that it comes with personalized experiences, the fact that it adopts to your wallpaper and things like that. Yeah, I think that would be pretty dope to see. Right now apps look almost the same thing. If you come from one app to the other that implement material design, they look almost the same app. If you look at Google Drive and Dropbox, they have almost the same UI, but with Material U, we're able to extend beyond that and have such unique and dope experience. I think Flutter is leading the way with that, but also Material U will be a pretty interesting approach as well. Yeah.
Great, great. And this next question I have is just for anyone who would want to answer. So basically, so even I'm a web dev, so there are always new APIs coming up, new features being announced across browsers, not even just at Google I/O, just randomly, yeah. Even devices being built in a way that they can accommodate new version of Androids or whatever iOS operating systems. So, what is your take about moving and adapting to these new APIs or new features or new capabilities that one could build in their apps, from a UI UX perspective or from an engineering perspective? Any one of you could answer, or all of you could jump into it. Yeah.
I thought Harun will jump on that one. Anyway, I think I'll give like from an engineering perspective, and I don't know. I'll say be cautious. Take caution with it. Don't just jump on everything. Make sure that I can say, like for example, like Compose, for example. Yeah, I mean, there's this part where if the other way is working, why break it? So I think you should only adapt it if you really absolutely need some of the benefits that it brings. That's when you should adapt them. So take caution. Don't just jump there. Harun, what do you think?
So maybe to add on, maybe taking caution, for me, it's usually, you can categorize it as two things. One, if in case you want to understand a technology much deeply, the better way is to play around with it while it is very young. So, for example, for those who started Compose when it was in alpha stages, you grasping those concepts is a bit easier for you, and also makes it much easier later on when everything changes. But in case you don't want to maybe play around and do a bit of research on these new technologies, I'd recommend you just wait, and maybe once they become stable, and maybe see if you can adopt them. But even before adopting them, one of the things I usually say is just evaluate if they really solve your problem, because not every technology will maybe solve what you need. Because, for example, the jetpack, we have like a couple of libraries, but you can't just go and use all of them because you've seen there are new technologies and they're doing amazing things. So you have to evaluate, does this library or tool solve your pain point, and how does it solve? And then you can maybe choose to adopt it. Or maybe another way for me I usually use to adopt is maybe just come up with articles or maybe tutorials explaining this new technology. That way you get to play around with it without having to use it in a app, and then know the drawbacks before you even use it.
Interesting. Yeah, yes. I think, Aaron, you are both making some interesting points. So the point is just to make sure that whatever you're trying to adapt actually solves a particular pain you have. And if you're just being curious, then it actually doesn't harm to kind of put your way in the way and try to explore how better you could use it if you were to decide to use it. And yeah, I think that is really interesting. Kamau, do you have any specific anything you would want to add on to that? Even though I have a very specific question to you thereafter.
Yeah, I think it's a good culture to adopt the spirit of experimentation and just playing around with things, at a personal level, because you get to learn a lot of tricks that you are eventually adapting to, the real world environment. But yeah, it's important to also focus on things that you will be useful to you, and that will solve your problems, from a developer experience to also what the challenges you are solving for your customers and for the business as well. Yeah, it's good to have those two angles or views to what you're doing during your practicing, practicing to get into the career, and also during work environment as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Now, to you, Kelvin. So I understand you've worked on some really, really different brands. And one thing I understand from a beginner level with brands, they want that kind of some uniqueness, yeah. And we are now talking about material and the new material that when you look at their components, they kind of bring some kind of common like user interfaces, the buttons, how you will build the shadows and everything. So as a UX UI engineer, how would you kind of double down onto these libraries like material design and build your own custom user interfaces, and also keeping in mind the type of the brand you're kind of trying to build into this particular new application or features within an application, while using material design or any other library, UI library, I mean. Yeah. So what is your take? Because you mentioned something about uniqueness and material, you kind of bring in that extension to it.
Yeah, I think it all trickles down to the goal of what you're building. So, for example, if you are more focused on pushing your brand, it's important to obviously have a very custom interface that involves your own kind of buttons, fields, and things like that. But again, it's a lot of work, and also with maintainability, you don't get that support directly from Google. You have to do all the maintenance and upgrades personally and by yourselves and things. I think this would work well in environments where they have R&D teams to kind of test all these things as they grow and develop. Because if you find apps grow from having 10 screens to 50 screens to 100 screens, and maintaining those kind of things requires a lot of dedication as well. So I'd say it depends on the goal. So if the goal is to have a completely unique experience, for example, if it's a saturated market, for example, with something like I think banking as well. Something like banking, I think it would be nice to have a personalized experience, and this means going out of the way to create your own kind of design language. So in such cases, it's the goal is to be unique and provide this very top-notch experience. And I don't think with the components provided, you can achieve this to that extent that I know a lot of people envision, a lot of executives envision. So the goal is normally to just create something from zero without the design, without material design and things like that to have their own. Yeah, but it's also important to learn the basics of material design, because even those custom things borrow a lot from material design and all these established design systems. Yeah. I think it trickles down to the goal or what you're trying to achieve at the end of the day. If it's a top-notch experience, you can go all the way out. If you want to solve a particular problem, for example, there are lots of powerful and great tools you can leverage on at the moment with material components to build a very nice experience, because it's already been, tested and people already using it, so it's already established. But again, you don't get that very super unique top-notch experience. It will obviously look similar to something else that's already there. Yeah.
Awesome, great. Harun and Ruto. So you mentioned about Ruto was talking about Android 12. I know as much as one may want to kind of work on new features around the new OS, how does it actually affect from an engineering perspective? The lower devices, the lower versions of Android, does it usually have a significant impact on how you would have to reauthor the entire application? Or how do you guys actually kind of approach that from an engineering perspective, making sure that as much as I'm adopting this new feature that is only supported on Android 12, I don't break the core architecture of the application for the lower devices or versions of Android? So what is usually your approach, Ruto and Harun?
So I can go first. So one of the thing is we have some features that are only supported maybe Android 12 and above. So maybe once maybe you are developing, you have to make sure maybe we have like maybe conditional clauses where you just say if Android version is greater than this version, maybe do this feature so and so. And then we also have something called fragmentation, which is as a result of having so many versions of Android. So you'll find like the way permissions work in Android 12 is not the way permissions work in also Android maybe 11, 10, and so on. So especially now that maybe the Google team is focusing on more of user privacy, so you have to be keen for such changes, because whether you like it or not, you'll be forced to adhere to maybe the changes for targeting higher devices, and also make sure that the lower devices are not also affected. Yeah, but yeah. So we have some changes which you cannot do away with, but we have some that you can always have that negotiating power. You can say, I don't need this feature, so it's not necessary for me to implement. But my approach is usually make sure you test on maybe the higher versions, because things usually break. Because maybe if you maybe let's say a gallery application in Android 12 will not work the same way like a gallery application in the same Android version like 5. So make sure you test like on these higher devices, because of a bit of changes in maybe privacy, and also we have these things called gestures. So make sure that you maybe test and then make sure you comply to the new changes if need be.
Interesting. Ruto, any perspective?
I mean, I think Harun just covered like the whole thing. I think I'll just add and say that as an engineer, it's also important for you to know, like how these permissions work. Like especially right now, like what he said that, like the way like gallery does not work the same way in say like for Android 12. So right now we are there's a ticket I'm working on right now, which is for permissions. So yeah, so just like being aware of how it works, how the specific things that the specific features you use in your app, how they work like with the other with the new, how can I put it, with the new features that are introduced, or the new OSs that have been introduced. It's just knowing that and also testing. So I don't finish that one completely.
Thanks. One more question to Kamal. As you were showing some interesting UI changes, some things with animations and stuff. So when you're building these applications or designing these interfaces for the developers to work on, how do you make sure that as much as the drawers or whatever the type of navigations changes that happen are really easy for the users to kind of adopt to easily and not get surprised? So what is usually your approach to just make sure that as much as I'm trying to experiment or actually build new user interfaces based on new releases, for example, if you are relying on material design, make sure that that doesn't break the user experience or the existing user experience in an existing application? So what is usually your approach to keep UX top notch as much as you change the UI?
Yeah, I think the bunch of things. To begin with, the best practices for these things. You can just drop an animation or an interaction anywhere you want. I think the second thing is context. For example, if you're launching an app you're expecting to open, and that's a nice place to put an animation, for example, to just enhance that experience. But if someone is clicking on a button, then it's moving across the screen, that's a weird. So context is key in this case. Make it simple, make it very simple. That animation should not interrupt the users. Be very, I think, heavy on the devices. Be wild, be very unexpected. Make it very simple. Just kind of the button expanding. It's a very basic interaction. It's like when you put your finger in water, there's that ripple effect. It's almost the same thing, adapts to what a user might have seen in an actual world environment. Yeah, I think keep it simple. Context is very key. Less is more, in my opinion. Less is more. I believe most users would agree with that. And also, I think the other most important thing is it should meet a user need. For example, it should have a user need that it's meeting. So, for example, if the app takes so much time to load, the animation would help the user to be patient. Maybe for those few 20 milliseconds, they could be patient and wait for that instead of not seeing anything on the screen. So I think that would be, for example, a user need that enhances the usability of your application. Yeah. So I think those 4 things really matter.
Great, awesome. Then I've had an opportunity to interact with some Android engineers there, and you find that sometimes designers or the UX UI engineers, sometimes they usually provide interfaces that are meant for iOS. And so how do you, as you design as a UI UX engineer, how do you make sure that if you're designing per platform and that there's some kind of consistency across 2 different type of apps you'll be building for iOS and Android? How do you balance off the core functioning of the application in terms of user interface and user journey or user experience across these different platforms? Because you find that someone designs iOS features that intends that he or she intends that will be built on for the Android platform. So how do you balance that up?
I think one thing I've learned is designers sit in a very awkward position because you're here solving users' needs. You also need to meet business requirements. You also need to make the features you're designing technically feasible. So I think design is a sport. I believe design is a sport, and you should involve engineers in your design process. So that's in initial stage when you are prototyping, you are testing the same. It should always involve maybe a solutions architect or an engineer for that specific platform. In most cases, I design omni-channel experiences, so that is an app that will be used, a product that will be used in Android, iOS, and web in some cases, and web also has tablet and mobile web as well. So I have to sit down with someone who is conversant with all these things in some cases. But from my own experience, having an engineering background has helped me a lot to, without involving all these people, I'm able to understand. But for designers who don't have a solid engineering background, it's also okay to consult with engineers to understand the technical feasibility of what they're designing. So make design a sport. I think it's even more fun that way because you also get to learn about new exciting features. I feel like for everything that iOS has, Android has, there's a bit of a slight difference, but I do believe they have that feature as well. It's just that how it looks or how the interaction works is a bit slightly different, of course. Yeah, so make design a sport, involve engineering, if it's a business issue, involve the business side of the product as well. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. That is really, really nice. So yeah, if I were to add a comment, I think basically it's very, very important to from a designer perspective or an engineering perspective, you need to kind of just make sure that if you're going to work on any interface for any particular feature or application, it's very important to involve everyone so that no one designs drawers that are not supported in Android or for a huge base of users you might have who are using lower Android versions or iOS versions. So yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting input. And I think, guys, we have like about how many minutes? 8 minutes. Yep. Really 8 or 6 minutes. And so I can't see any questions, but I think you guys are really, really easy to find. So you can see there we have their Twitter handles. You can always reach out to them if you have any questions. And for any resources, we will be able to share via our mailing list or even in the comment. So you can always go ahead and spark conversations with these amazing speakers online, and they'll be able to kind of help you. The community guys, yeah. So maybe for a parting shot, anything you would want to say as a parting shot from speaker perspective, professional perspective, you can go ahead for it as we close. So we could start with Valentine. Any parting shot?
Well, keep coding. That's the best. That's the only way you can improve. Just keep coding and learn in public. That's it.
Awesome. Harun.
Yeah, so for me, I think once I watch like the IO videos, I usually say it's an interesting time to be like a developer. So maybe go out, try these features that has been maybe highlighted, because we only just did like a highlight. We have tons of information on the documentation and the videos and the resources we'll share. So just go try them out. If something interests you, maybe you can adopt it or maybe keep it in your arsenal. Maybe you can use it much later on, but be sure to be updated.
Great. Kamal, any perspective from UX UI view?
Yeah, I
Any?
think it's yeah, I think practice is the key to achieving great success and being an awesome designer and also engineer. So putting all this knowledge into practice, your side projects, try to build something end to end with Material You by the end of the year. I feel like you'll be way ahead of the curve. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much, guys, our speakers. And I really appreciate you guys making time for our amazing recap. So we were expecting to kind of have a whole recap kind of from web, UI, Android, cloud and stuff, but we opted to kind of start off with a few because of we don't want to kind of have a long stream that sometimes becomes hectic to kind of watch. Yeah, in a really situation. So we started with the Android recap. Moving forward, we will also create sessions for web, ML, and cloud. So it's going to be a series of recap sessions, just more of conversational, just to kind of provide an opportunity or just provide a way that people who are doing really amazing interaction with these features can share from a personal experience and and just have a chat on how their journey is about the same. And yeah, I believe that will be really, really interesting. But we are really looking forward to resuming back to our on-site or in-person events. And we are really working well towards that. And hopefully during our Dev Fest, we might have a short in-person Dev Fest event. And moving into 2022, go back to having these fun events we usually have in Eldoret, and even join the other communities around the country and globally as a community to just make sure that we are providing resources for every one of us to learn and share the same speakers and stuff. So you can always join us as a community, as I said, on the GTG platform, and we have really a fun community. And if you ever want to kind of share whatever you're building, you can always reach out to us via our Twitter handles, and we will be really happy and very happy to have you speaking and sharing your journey with us. So I think that is it. And have an amazing one, guys. Looking forward to the next recap session. I see we have our program manager in SSA, Aniedi, in the chat. And hi, Aniedi, thanks for joining us. And yeah, looking forward to having you in the next sessions also. Bye, guys. Harun, you can say bye. Kevin, bye. Valentine, bye.
Bye.